Former Maine Attorney General Jim Tierney coming up next on Maine Challenge. Hello, and welcome to Maine Challenge. Our guest today is former Maine Attorney General Jim Tierney of Brunswick, a former Maine legislator and a seer and doer in Maine politics for many, many years. Welcome, Jim.
Well, great to be here, Chuck.
It's good to see you, as always. Jim has a national reputation as an advisor to attorneys general throughout the country, and he is also taught and teaches at Harvard Law School, and he lives part-time most of the time in Maine, and he's got always very insightful opinions about Maine politics, and that's why we asked him to join us today. Jim, would you talk just a little bit about your time in the legislature, when you were in that Maine House? Also in the Maine House were a few other characters like Olympia Snow and Jock McKernan and Dave Emery and my friend Harry Richardson. And I remember those days back in, I guess, the early to mid 70s. And I wonder if you could tell us about the 70s and 80s in Maine politics and how it gets us to where we are today.
Well, I don't know how it helps to get us today, but it was a long time ago. And the legislature, as I hope always will be, is a very place people get along with each other every day. You kind of have to if you're a legislator. Today's friends, tomorrow's enemy, vice versa. I'm a Democrat. Several of the terms while I was there, the House was controlled by Republicans, or the Senate was controlled by Republicans. So we had to get together. We had an independent governor for a lot of that, Jim Longley, and he kind of beat up on the legislature all the time. So we got along. We passed the budget. Law rules are the same. Constitution's basically the same. We got a lot done. We passed a lot of uniform laws, consumer protection laws, environmental laws, probate laws, criminal code. All those were passed during those years. Educational funding, equity, a lot of good relationships back and forth, and a lot of good personal memories.
And when you became Attorney General, who was the governor?
Joe Brennan was the governor for the first 6 years while I was Attorney General, and Jock McKernan was the governor for the second 4 years. I always had a good personal relationship with them both, and we mostly communicated through staff because it was easier, but when on the big issues, we would be there, and almost always we agreed. Sometimes we didn't, and I'd have to take a different path. The Attorney General is a separate office. It's not appointed by the governor. It has constitutional independence. So there were times when I thought they'd exceeded their authority, and so I went my own way. We had a great crew. It's a great office.
Did you, when you were Attorney General in Maine, did it prepare you for the work you're doing in the national arena with attorneys general from around the country?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was actually quite fortunate. The Maine Attorney General has a very broad jurisdiction with criminal jurisdiction, civil jurisdiction, consumer, environment. So, and I was also a very hands-on person. I had about 100 lawyers, and I was very hands-on. So if you do something for 10 years, as I did, I pretty much became familiar with every division and what they did. So after I left office, I was retained pretty quickly by the Attorneys General of Ohio and who was a Democrat, and Arizona was a Republican. And I'd go in and I'd do consulting for them. And we did things in Maine that other states couldn't do. So I'd basically export my ideas. I'd learn, I'd listen as I went along. And so I ended up working for over half in over half the states. I still dabble in that from time to time. I used to make my living at it. Now I do it for free. And then I also jump into the big cases. I jump into the tobacco case, the Microsoft case, the home equity robo-signing cases. So I would be involved and oftentimes consult with the attorneys general and with the federal government and bring people together so that we could keep as united front as we could as the states tried to do things. Now, basically said, the states are designed constitutionally to fill the gaps. So if the federal government's not doing something, then the states are kind of designed to step up and do it. So when we had two Bush administrations, they didn't do a lot of consumer protection, so the states took it over, that kind of thing.
Which is a perfect transition for my next question, and that is and I know every state is different, but how do the attorneys general fit into the rather delicate relationship that's happened between some of our larger state governors and the president and the White House, who seem to be restricting the availability of some of the very critical materials and safety equipment that we need in fighting the coronavirus?
It's actually a pretty simple question. The vast amount of governmental services that are provided to the people in every state come from state government. It doesn't come from the federal government. And if you throw education in there, because states have a big involvement in local education. So, and billions of dollars go from the federal government to the states to help carry out those purposes. And the money doesn't come without any strings. So the federal government's ability to control what states do or don't do is how you get the money. So if you want the federal money, then you kind of have to dance the federal government's song. But basically public health, which is what you're asking about, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Public health is a state function, always has been a state function. And I might know, not a municipal function, it's a state function. So the question is, obviously a pandemic doesn't respect state lines, right? Right, people move around. We have a constitutional right to move around, and so what happens? The disease comes with us, and so when you cross state lines, the federal government is more apt to get involved. But the basic functioning of our economy has also become far more nationalized, internationalized since I was in the legislature. So it used to be you did something in Maine, it was resolved in Maine, but now, Walgreens in Maine is the same as Walgreens in California. So what you do is anything you do automatically is going to have a national impact, international too. We'll put that aside for the moment. So anything that was bought, sold on the internet, again, crosses state lines. So state government, state regulatory powers have to lie down with federal regulatory powers. So we have this particular president who doesn't know anything that we're talking about. I can't believe he's ever read the Constitution. I don't think he's ever read a law book. And so he just kind of pontificates every day and doesn't make much sense. So the question is, if you're a state government, is how do you find the adult who's still functioning within the federal government? And just leave the president out of it. So that's what a lot of state governments are doing. They're trying to talk to the CDC or talk to Secretary Mnuchin. They're talking to some of the adults who are left. A lot of them came and left, so we don't have many adults left, but there are some. And they're hanging in there, and I hope they do, so that we can figure out how to get federal aid into the states. But once it hits the states, state government's going to decide where it goes. That's why... and I think our governor in Maine, but I also think governors around the country are doing a pretty good job. They've got overwhelming support of the people in their states from both political parties to try to chart this course. You have a few loudmouths who, bloviate, but they don't really count. So they don't.
I would love to be wrong about this, but I really get the feeling that the White House wants to reward states that support the president and punish states that haven't shown enough support for the president. Am I right or wrong?
No, well, let's step back. I mean, Congress is the same way. When the Congress passed their horrific tax cut, so-called tax cut, they particularly and specifically carved out several provisions that would hurt what we would call blue states. Stunning to me that Senator Collins would vote for that bill. It was, I mean, not only was it a huge giveaway to the wrong people, but it specifically discriminated against, in the way, without getting into details, what we can deduct and what we can't deduct, those states with income taxes and all those kinds of things. So the president is certainly reflecting the values that brought him to office. He is going to reward, by virtue of his philosophy, if you can call it that, his instinct of the moment, he's going to reward states that supported him, but not necessarily to get elected, because that's what he believes. I mean, he doesn't believe in government. He's never believed in government. He wants to do what he wants. He likes the bankruptcy courts. They're his friend. But he doesn't like any of the other courts. He doesn't like prosecution, who are going to come in and put people who break the law in jail. He doesn't like them at all. So he, in a sense, you're correct. You could just pretend we're on one of the networks and say, oh, yes, he's out there trying to hurt the Democratic states. But I just think he's being who he is. And he believes in very small government, unless he's getting a handout, getting some largesse from it. He doesn't believe in the IRS, obviously, or he would have disclosed his tax returns. He doesn't just believe in the environmental questions. He doesn't believe in regulating charity fraud, which is something attorneys general do, because he engages in charity fraud. He admitted that. He's banned, he and his family are banned from ever engaging in charity work in the state of New York. He agreed, he signed the document, said, yeah, I'm guilty. But then he gets on TV and said, I'm not. Right? So it is what it is. Sorry, gave you a little rant there, but that's essentially what we're trying to do. So for those of us who believe in law enforcement here, and that's what this is about, believe that the laws we have ought to be enforced, the regulations ought to be enforced. This is the critical issue facing us during this pandemic. And the president is working very hard to make sure the laws are not enforced. So he's getting rid of any inspector generals. He's getting rid of any sort of person looking over his shoulder. So naturally, he doesn't want any judges, he doesn't want any inspector generals, and he sure doesn't want any governors or attorneys general to look over his shoulder. And most of the Republicans are going along with that. They're kind of backing him up. If he gets defeated, or maybe even if he isn't defeated, the Republican Party will fall on his bones like a jackal and tear him to pieces once the election's over, because these laws that we're talking about were put together by Republicans and Democrats. You know, I mean, the food stamp program came from Senator Dole, right? You know, he's from Kansas. He's a Republican. A lot of farmers in Kansas. You know, this is good. People eating more, eating better. They're going to eat. You know, work with you know, this is. I think when he goes, when Trumpism goes, you know, he's not going to have a friend in the world.
You ran for governor in 1986. Right. You've thought a lot about governance, right, and you work with it constantly.
Every day I'm still working.
6 of my 8 years as a legislator were with the governor being Paul LePage, right, who, in my view, didn't understand, didn't want to know about how government works, didn't care. Right. And now we are, I think, in my personal opinion, we're fortunate that we have a governor who not only cares about how government works, but she's worked on so many levels of government as a legislator, as an attorney general. She knows how the state works, how the state should work. And I think I give her pretty good marks as to how she's handling the this COVID nobody could have expected. I mean,
there'll be some tough times. There'll be some tough times, right? The state budget's in the hole, obviously, for many reasons. I'm not driving my car, right? So, I mean, there's less gas tax. That means there's less money to fix the roads. That means there's fewer people working, fixing the roads, all these kinds of obvious things. So there are going to be some tough times. I mean, Governor Mills had a pretty easy role for her first year. There's plenty of money in the bank, friendly legislature, but we're going to have some really tough times. So the question is, will the legislature respond in seeing the real public interest of the state, or will they just follow their own partisan bouncing ball? It's, you know, we hope that people say, yeah. I mean, look, A lot of liberals are going to have to suck it up. There are going to be a lot of government programs that are going to be cut. There's going to be less money for education. There's going to be less money for social services because we don't have it. There's going to be less money to fix the roads. There's going to be less money for environmental protection because there isn't any money, right? I mean, whether you're the most liberal governor or the most conservative, you can't spend something you don't have. And the state constitution says we have to balance our budget. Now, as far as former Governor LePage, I've never met him. He's kind of pathetic guy, you know. I mean, I think he misses having the state trooper drive him around, and you know, he likes getting on TV and stuff. So, I mean, it's really pathetic, right? He lives in Florida. I mean, that's the only word I can think of is pathetic. He showed up. He showed up for the demonstration, the protest on Saturday. He just wants to see. It's one of these guys. You know, I've dealt with, if not hundreds of thousands of elected officials now. I deal with them all across the country. I've dealt with probably a dozen of the men and women who are in the U.S. Senate now. I've been either clients or close associates with me when they were Attorney General. Jeff Sessions came to my house in Lisbon Falls. John Cornyn used to ask my advice. He was the AG of Texas for a while. So I'm here. I see all these guys. They come and they go, right? So some of them, a very few, just can't give it up, right? So you say, okay, Governor, you, Maine, LePage, you caught a lucky. He never got 50% of the vote. He never could. He never broke half. So why don't you just go to Florida where you want to live anyway? But they can't give it up. They have to have their voice on there. And it's actually, if you take the politics out of it, it's kind of sad. I mean, come on, Governor, why don't you read some fiction? You know, half the books in the world are fiction. Why don't you read anything? You know, why don't you jog? Why don't you play with your grandkids? Why don't you just do stuff? And I see this in both parties, but he is kind of like the classic example of a guy. So he's not going anywhere. He's dead meat. I don't think he's going to run. It's all bluster.
Well, the protest that we've now seen at least 3 Saturdays that are held in front of the Blaine House near the State House. Yeah. These kinds of protests, and in Maine, fortunately, we haven't seen the AR-15 toting, camel-wearing nutcases, but have we seen any of that against Republican governors?
No.
Or is this partisan?
Well, look, let's get this straight, okay? Ordinarily, these protests are meaningless. You get 100 people jumping up and down. I'm going to impeach the governor. I mean, that was too much for even the Republican leadership. I'm going to impeach the governor. So, I mean, it's not even big theater. There's so little news going on because we're all locked down. I don't blame the press. They got to run up and cover it, jump up and down, and hold a sign, bang a bell, beep a horn. But we're talking a couple hundred people in the state of 1.2 million, 1.3 million. This is not serious in a political way, but it is very serious in a public health way. Very, very serious. And this has not been true for other protests on other issues. I've been in both sides of protesting, right? But it's on look, if 100 people go playing around, jumping up in front of the Blaine House, no mask, no gloves, and then they go back, spread all over the state, and they pump our gas, or they work in our grocery stores, or they, just live their lives. They work on our cars if cars break down. This is really scary because just one of those people can make a lot of people sick. And so they come back and they shake hands with the local police officer before he can pull his hand away. Then the local police officer gets called an emergency or has to run out. 10 other people, each of those 10 people, and then we're in real trouble. So the question really isn't the protest. They have a constitutional right to protest. I defend it. Absolutely. They have a right to stand out there and jump up and down all they want, say whatever they want. But the risk that comes for all of us is it stops this very steady, careful opening up that we desperately need to have as a state and as a country to get our economy back, to get people working. It's not just the money, it's your sense of self, it's who you are. Yeah, I hang out with my high school friends, a couple of my high school friends, they're over 70, they can't volunteer at soup kitchens, and their sense of purpose has been taken away. It's not just making money. My daughter's a school teacher. She's trying to touch these kids, but do it over the internet and provide the kind of support and guidance that they need. This is very, very difficult. I've got 4 grandchildren in college. Can you imagine 4 grandchildren in college at the same time? And sure, they're going to have their grades, but will they be able to have the kind of personal experiences and make the personal friendships that you make when you're in college? So what happens is it's the disease that's guiding us. It's the virus that defines us. And so the problem with these protests are not the political protests. It's the fact that if just a few people don't go by the rules, we're all in trouble. And if you don't mind, to give you the easiest example, if one person pees in the swimming pool, nobody wants to swim in the swimming pool, right? It only takes one person to really inflict great damage. We don't want to be authoritarian. We don't want to run around and arrest everybody who doesn't wear a mask. We need to have people use common sense. When I go for a walk in the woods, which I do every day, walk 5 miles a day, I don't wear a mask and nobody around. I'm using my common, I got one in my pocket. So we don't want to become authoritarian. But on the other hand, we need careful government. It has to be planned. It has to be scientifically based. And I'm sorry, I'm not letting you ask many questions, but the kind of foolishness. I mean, it's not a problem with the demonstration. They have a constitutional right. They have a First Amendment right to do that. But when you hear people say, no one can tell me I can't work or I can't make a living, that's ridiculous. It's preposterous. That's why we have licenses. That's why, right? That's why we have laws, right? There are things you can do, there are things you can't do. That's what we call democracy, passed by Republicans and Democrats over the years, and they overwhelmingly work. And one of the laws that works is to give the governor the chance in an emergency to start to tell people that they can't do certain things. It's right. It's a core democratic value.
If you were the governor, how would you balance the deep need for trying to recover our economy and letting people go back to work, letting the stores and the restaurants open up, versus the public health and the public safety coordinates that are, I mean, we've never seen this before.
All right. If I were governor, I would resign and figure out some way to get Janet Mills appointed, because I think she's doing a great job. It's a much better job than I could do. But you know what? There's a couple things I've watched her do that shows she's really from Maine. All right. My wife and I were going for a ride. We don't get out of the car, but we drive around. And it was the last couple of days of March. And I noticed a bunch of people fishing. Lake Auburn, freshwater fishing. Now, I know for a fact, wait a minute, fishing season isn't open yet. It starts March. So I went back and checked. Janet Mills said, we can make a deal here. We can let people fish. Right? Because Maine people love to fish. She loves to fish. So we saw it again now as Memorial Day weekend approached Maine. Governor Mills said, people like to just go and sit in the camp. So, which is Maine people only, right? So she understands the state. She understands how people are actually living and making huge sacrifices. I have to Zoom I have 8 grandchildren, not 4 in college, but I've got 8. And so how do I see them, right? I can't touch them. It's all right. Governor Mills is going to lead me through that. So we're doing it by region, by part of the state. We're obviously going to have to deal with our many, many summer visitors. Hope they come. I'm not trying to keep everybody out. I hope they respect us. And I think overwhelmingly will, because I think overwhelmingly the people of the United States are respecting this. So I think I would just follow Janet Mills' directives, just like everybody else. She knows more. She's got more data. She's getting more input.
And I know for a fact that she really is a fisherman. She's not just playing a fisherman on TV. She fishes.
So what you do here in this situation is you have to kind of play with it. You have to her balance is to keep people knowing that she's on their side. Okay. And that's where you have to, and that's complicated because you've got enemies out there trying to say she's not, driving, silly conspiracy theories and, foolishness. That's why my mother-in-law, I have a 93-year-old mother-in-law, it's their favorite word. She says, that's all foolishness, right? So she's 93 years old. She knows Governor Mills is on her side. We haven't seen her because she's locked down, but she talks to my wife every day. And she says, Governor Mills is getting this. She's on my side. She gets it. I can't do this. I can't do that. But she understands it. And that's the risk. So you have to let the state up as much as you can. You have to pay attention to the different regions. And you have to let people, and at the end of the day, it's a risk. The virus is driving the boat here, right? No human being is driving the boat. And so you have to kind of have faith in her and her whole team. It's a very high quality team. Interesting indication, if you want to compare Governor Mills to the president. Not a single member of Governor Mills's cabinet has left. They're all still there. They came in good times. They're working in bad times. Nobody's left. That means they've got a team working here. It's not just her talking. She's got a team of thoughtful people who are trying to figure this out. The president, I don't know. Every day somebody's gone. He likes everybody acting so he can fire them. He thinks it's a big TV show. And you can't do much about that.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate you coming. I wasn't really worried about popping the clutch and having you go on about several other issues, but I really appreciate your insight.
Wow.
And I hope you'll join us again sometime.
The people who are watching this who've never heard of me before, I have no idea. And there are many. And for a few old timers out there who remember my time as AG, nice to see you again. Good luck.
It's nice to see you. Thank you very much, Jim Tierney, former Attorney General and Mainer. And I still think of you on the farm in Lisbon Falls, but I know you've moved on a little bit. But
still got the farm in Lisbon Falls. We just kind of go.
There you go. You still got the farm. Yeah. And thank you for joining us on Maine Challenge, a production of Indivisible Lincoln County. See you again next week. Thank you.